It was a rainy Tuesday night, not the kind of weather you want to be out in. But I needed some essentials and decided to brave the downpour. The parking lot was nearly empty, probably because of the weather, and the few cars that were there were parked close to the entrance to avoid the rain as much as possible. I grabbed a cart with a squeaky wheel, isn't that always the case, and made my way inside. The store was quiet, almost unnervingly so. The usual ambient pop music seemed louder in the sparse setting, and the flickering of a faulty, fluorescent light added a weird vibe to the place. I headed straight to the back where the groceries are, wanting to grab my things and get out as quickly as possible. That's when I noticed a guy, a bit disheveled, wearing a heavy, dirty raincoat even though he was inside. He was pacing back and forth in front of the dairy section, muttering to himself. I tried not to stare, but it was hard not to notice him. Every aisle I went down seemed to echo my footsteps, and every so often I'd hear the strange man's mumbling just one aisle over. It got to the point where I felt like he was following me, though every time I glanced back, he seemed absorbed in his own world. After about 20 minutes of this, I was ready to check out. I had a cart full of groceries and just wanted to get home. But as I made my way to the front, I saw that the man had positioned himself near the exit, talking loudly now to an imaginary person. He seemed agitated, gesturing wildly. I hesitated, considering another exit, but the other doors were all the way on the other side of the store. I figured I'd just keep my head down and try to slip by unnoticed. That's when the lights went out. The entire store plunged into darkness, the only light coming from the emergency exit signs. It was pitch black and suddenly very, very quiet. No music, no flickering light, just darkness and the sound of rain hitting the roof. Panic set in almost immediately, not just for me, but for everyone in the store. You could hear it in the quick, muffled conversations, whispers of fear, confusion. Someone screamed, a child maybe, and that set off a few others. I fumbled with my phone to use it as a flashlight. And that's when I heard footsteps running towards me. Fast. My heart leapt into my throat. I shone my light towards the sound, and it was him. The man in the raincoat barreling down the main aisle. I froze. This was it, I thought. I'm about to get mugged or worse. But he ran right past me, still shouting at no one, knocking into a display of chips as he passed. The sound of his footsteps faded, and I was left shaking in the middle of the aisle. Moments later, the lights flickered back on. The store looked like a scene from a disaster movie. Products on the floor, a few people crying, everyone disoriented. The store manager came over the intercom apologizing, saying there had been a power surge and that everything was now under control. But nothing felt under control. I abandoned my cart and left the store immediately, not even bothering to check out. The drive home was tense, and every shadow made me jump. I kept thinking about the man in the raincoat and what could have happened if he'd been violent or if he'd actually approached me in the dark. I still shop there, but never at night. And whenever there's a storm, I make sure I'm safely at home, far from any dark, eerie supermarkets. It was a bleak and overcast Saturday when I decided to make a quick stop at Target to pick up a few essentials. I wasn't in the mood for a long shopping trip, just in and out with minimal fuss. The weather seemed to have kept most shoppers at home, and the store was quieter than usual, the aisles almost ghostly. I headed straight for the personal care section to grab some toiletries. As I turned into the aisle, I couldn't help but notice a man at the other end behaving oddly. He kept looking over his shoulder and seemed very jittery. Every time someone walked past the aisle, he would clutch his backpack tighter and shuffle uncomfortably. His behavior was odd enough to set me on edge, but I tried to focus on my shopping list. Trying to mind my own business, I reached for some shampoo when suddenly, the lights in the store flickered and dimmed for a moment. The brief change in lighting seemed to spook the man even more, and he quickly left the aisle. Curiosity got the better of me, and I found myself following him at a distance, intrigued by his suspicious behavior. He moved quickly through the store, constantly looking back as if he was afraid of being followed. At one point, he stopped in an aisle full of kitchen supplies and seemed to be fumbling with something inside his backpack. I watched from behind a display, trying to stay out of sight. It looked like he was trying to stash something inside a large cooking pot on the shelf. Just then, another shopper turned into the aisle, and the man abruptly closed his backpack and moved away. The shopper, a middle-aged woman, noticed the cooking pot slightly out of place and casually glanced inside. To my shock and hers, she pulled out a small, expensive-looking electronic device still in its packaging. Confused, she looked around, her eyes catching mine. I shrugged helplessly, indicating I had no idea how it got there. At that moment, store security approached, having been alerted by another customer who had seen the man acting suspiciously. The woman handed them the electronic device, and they quickly radioed for more assistance. I watched as security personnel began to search the store, speaking into their walkie-talkies and pointing towards the exits. The man realized he was being pursued and started to run, darting towards the back of the store. Security chased after him, and within moments, it was like a scene out of a cop show, complete with running, shouting, and the tension of a chase. I decided it was a good time to check out, wanting no part in whatever drama was unfolding. At the registers, everyone was talking about the commotion. The cashier told me that the man had been suspected of shoplifting, possibly even hiding stolen goods throughout the store for later retrieval. As I left the store, police cars pulled up to the front. I didn't stick around to see the outcome. The whole experience left me rattled, turning an ordinary trip to Target into a nerve-wracking adventure. It was a drizzly gray Wednesday evening when I found myself pulling into the Target parking lot, intent on grabbing some necessities for the week. The dim lighting of the parking lot combined with the misty rain created a foggy, almost surreal atmosphere as I parked my car. I grabbed a cart inside, fortunately a quiet one, and started my shopping in the groceries section, wanting to get it over with as quickly as possible due to the unsettling weather outside. The store was surprisingly busy for a weekday evening, with families and late shoppers bustling about. The soft buzz of conversations and the occasional child's laughter should have been comforting, but for some reason, I felt uneasy. I attributed my nervousness to the weather and my desire to get home and relax, so I tried to shake off the feeling as I made my way towards the home essentials. That's when I first noticed him, a tall, broad-shouldered man dressed in a dark hoodie and jeans, standing in the aisle staring intently at a selection of kitchen knives. There was something about the way he was looking at them, not casually like a shopper comparing prices, but with a focused intensity that made my skin crawl. I quickened my pace, telling myself I was being paranoid, and headed towards the electronics. As I browsed the latest gadgets, trying to distract myself, I heard a sudden loud crash from a couple aisles over. It sounded like metal shelves collapsing. Shoppers screamed and started running, creating a chaotic surge away from the noise. Heart pounding, I hesitated, then joined the crowd moving away from the disturbance. Store security rushed past, heading towards the source of the noise. As the commotion settled and curious shoppers started to drift back, I overheard snippets of conversation. Someone had knocked over an entire display. though whether it was intentional or an accident wasn't clear. Feeling more on edge than ever, I decided to cut my trip short. I grabbed a few more items quickly and made my way to the checkout. The lines were long, everyone tense and talking about the incident. I found myself constantly looking around, half expecting another disturbance. While waiting, I noticed the man in the hoodie again. He was 2 lines over, without any items, just standing there, watching the cashiers and occasionally scanning the crowd. His presence made me even more uncomfortable, and I tried to convince myself that he was just another shopper, albeit a strangely behaving one. Just as I was about to be checked out, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the store into darkness. Screams and shouts filled the air as the emergency lights slowly flickered on, casting a dim, eerie glow. In the confusion, I saw the man in the hoodie moving swiftly towards the exits, bypassing the checkout lanes completely. The power was restored moments later, and a shaken calm returned. I paid for my items and hurried to my car, rain pattering softly on the roof as I loaded my groceries. Just as I was about to drive away, several police cars roared into the parking lot, lights flashing. I watched as officers hurried inside. My curiosity piqued despite my anxiety. Unable to leave just yet, I waited. After a few minutes, I saw the officers escorting the man in the hoodie out of the store. He was handcuffed, head bowed, not resisting. One of the officers was carrying a bag of items that hadn't been paid for: electronics, kitchen knives, and other miscellaneous goods. As they passed by my car, I caught a glimpse of the man's face, cold, emotionless, his eyes almost lifeless. It sent a shiver down my spine. The police loaded him into a squad car and drove off, leaving the parking lot suddenly quiet, the drama of the evening slowly fading away. Driving home, I couldn't shake the image of the man's expression or the eerie feeling of the night. It felt like I had walked straight into a scene from a thriller, the kind where you never know who to trust. That night, Target transformed from a mundane shopping venue into a backdrop for something much darker, reminding me that sometimes real life can be scarier than any movie. It was an unusually warm fall afternoon when I decided to stop by Target to pick up some decor for an upcoming Halloween party. The store was moderately busy, with people taking advantage of the pleasant weather to get their weekend shopping done. As I entered, I was immediately drawn to the seasonal section, brightly decorated with pumpkins, skeletons, and all sorts of Halloween paraphernalia. I was examining some spooky LED lights when a sudden loud argument broke out nearby. Startled, I turned toward the noise and saw a man and a woman at the electronics counter, visibly upset and gesturing wildly at a young employee who seemed overwhelmed and on the verge of tears. The couple was furious, accusing the employee of lying about a product return policy. Their voices rose higher and higher, drawing the attention of nearby shoppers. The young employee, barely out of high school by the looks of it, was trying to explain something with a policy manual in hand, but the couple kept cutting her off, their accusations becoming more personal and harsh. Feeling a mix of concern and indignation, I moved closer, wondering if I could help defuse the situation. But just as I approached, the man shoved the counter so hard that a display of phones clattered to the floor. The noise was shocking, and it silenced the area for a split second before the woman started shouting again, now demanding to see a manager. The tension in the air was palpable. Other shoppers had stopped in their tracks, watching the scene unfold with a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. The manager hurried over, a middle-aged man with a calm demeanor, who immediately took control of the situation. He listened to the couple's complaints, his expression unreadable, then turned to the young employee, asking her to go to the break room to calm down. I lingered nearby, picking at the Halloween items but keeping an ear on the conversation. The manager spoke quietly with the couple, his body language firm yet open. Gradually, the couple's anger seemed to deflate. They talked for a few more minutes, their voices now just a murmur in the busy store. As the couple finally walked away, not entirely satisfied but no longer causing a scene, the manager went to check on the young employee, ensuring she was okay before returning to clean up the mess at the electronics counter. Shaken by the incident, I decided to skip the rest of my shopping list. On my way out, I saw the young employee returning to the floor, her eyes red but her posture steady. I gave her an encouraging smile, feeling a renewed respect for the challenges retail workers face daily. As I walked back to my car, the festive Halloween decorations no longer seemed quite so cheerful. It was a chilly Sunday evening, and I had just decided to stop by Target to pick up a few essentials before the upcoming busy week. The air had that crispness that signals the approach of winter, and it was already getting dark by the time I pulled into the parking lot, which was more crowded than I expected for a Sunday night. I grabbed a cart, luckily a quiet one this time, and headed inside, aiming to be quick about my shopping. The store was bustling, contrary to the eerie emptiness of my last late-night visit, and the noise was almost comforting. I needed to pick up some cleaning supplies, snacks, and hopefully a new book if anything caught my eye. As I made my way towards the household goods, I couldn't help but notice a group of 3 guys. They were loud, laughing boisterously, and carrying on in a way that seemed just a bit too intense for a casual shopping trip. Their energy felt off, almost too frenetic, and I found myself trying to keep my distance. I rounded into the book aisle and began scanning the titles, trying to focus on choosing something interesting to read. That's when I heard a sudden sharp commotion from a couple of aisles over. It sounded like shelves being knocked over. Instantly, the atmosphere in the store changed. The previously comforting buzz turned into whispers of concern and confusion. Curious and a bit concerned, I peered around the corner and saw a store employee on the ground, a few books scattered around her. She was holding her arm, her face twisted in pain. The group of guys I had noticed before was rushing away from the scene, their laughter no longer jovial, but nervous and hurried. People around began to gather, asking the employee if she was okay and calling for help. I learned from the murmurs that the guys had accidentally knocked into her while horsing around, causing her to fall and hurt her arm. Management was called and first aid was administered right there in the aisle. Feeling a mix of anger and sympathy, I decided to help by giving a statement to the store manager about what I had seen. As I waited near the front for the manager to finish up, I noticed the group of guys again. They weren't leaving. Instead, they were milling around near the entrance, whispering to each other, glancing back towards the store as if debating their next move. The manager, a stern-looking woman with a no-nonsense attitude, thanked me for my input and assured me that they would handle the situation from here. She walked decisively towards the group of guys who suddenly seemed to realize they weren't going to just walk away from this. They started talking over each other, trying to explain, but the manager wasn't having any of it. Security was called, and after a brief discussion, the guys were escorted out of the store. I finished my shopping with a heavy heart, the excitement of finding a new book entirely dampened by the incident. Thank you for watching. If you found these stories gripping, don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling content. For another hair-raising tale, check out our suggested video. And if you're hungry for more eerie encounters, dive into our playlist featuring similar chilling narratives.